So we're going to get a group of equations in a minute. I'm going to show you a group of equations, and you're going to tell me if they're linear or not. They're not linear if you have a variable in the denominator, in the basement, okay? They're not linear if the equation has a radical in it. Square root, cube root, fourth root, any kind of radical, not linear. So then you have, if you have two variables multiplied together, they're not, okay? And no exponent in an equation, in a linear equation, is going to be greater than 1, or anything other than 1, actually. It can't be anything but 1, okay? That means there will be no exponents in your equation, okay? So turn to page 15 in your workbook. Okay, we're going to put this equation, it's a linear equation. It doesn't have any variables in the basement. It doesn't have any variables going together like x, y. It doesn't have any radicals or anything like that. So we're going to put it in standard form. And standard form is ax plus by equals c, where a is greater than or equal to 0, and a, b, and c are integers. What's an integer? What's an integer?
A number.
What kind? So when I say a, b, and c are integers, I don't want fractions. No fractions, which we will see one in a minute. Okay? So we got to put the x first, and it's got to be on the left side of the equal sign. Is the x already on the left side of the equal sign up here?
Yeah, see.
Yep. So it's going to go first. So it's a negative 2x. Remember, the sign right in front of it goes with it. Now, where's the y?
On the right side.
How do I move it to the left side?
Negative.
Make it a negative 4y. And what about the plain number? Where is it?
Just like on the left side.
And it needs to go across on the right side. So it's going to be equal to negative 14, right? But I said here, a has to be greater or equal to 0. What kind of numbers are greater or equal to 0?
1.
Positive numbers. Very good. Positive numbers. Is this number here positive?
No.
So how do we change it to positive without upsetting the equation?
Multiply by negative 1.
Divide what by negative 1, or multiply by what by negative 1?
Negative 2 by negative 1.
Everybody gets multiplied by negative 1. So if this guy is negative, you change the sign of everybody. If you don't, it will be wrong, because you're just giving one person the negative 1 and you're not giving it to everybody. So you're upsetting the equality of the equation, right? So now there's one more thing to look for, and that is we're going to reduce the equation if possible. How do you reduce a fraction? Like if I have 6/8, how do you reduce that?
6/8, that would be 3/4.
3/4, because both of those numbers are divisible by 2, right? Well, what can I do here? What can I divide everybody by here in this equation?
2.
Huh? 2, because they're all even numbers. So if I divide everybody by 2, I get x plus 2y equals 7. And that is your last answer, your final answer. You have changed this equation into standard form, okay? Who needs to move first? To the left? The x. So when you move it over here, what does it turn into? Positive 1/5 x. The y is already on the left side, so we're going to leave it where it is. And then the number's already on the right side, don't have to move him either, which is great. But we've got plenty of fractions, okay? First thing I'm going to look at is a negative. No, it's not. The guy with the x is not negative. Don't have to change the signs, right?
White.
That is a y. Okay, so now I've got to get rid of the fractions. If you have fifths and thirds and 15ths, what is the common denominator between that? 15 is correct. So you're going to multiply everybody by 15. And if you're bad at this, you're going to use your calculators. Okay? When you put 15 times 1/5 in the calculator, you should get a 3. When you put 15 times 2/3 in the calculator, you should get a 10. And that equals -1 when you put -1/15 times 15 in the calculator. So now you do your checklist. Is it the x first, the y second, the equal sign, and the number?
Yay.
Check. Is the a positive? The 3 is positive. Check. Are there any fractions?
No.
Check. And can we reduce this in any way?
No.
So that is the final answer.
Yeah.
4 questions you're going to ask yourself. Okay? Is it in the form of this? Is a bigger than or equal to 0? Are there fractions? Which would be a no fractions on that. And is it reduced? Okay? So when we're doing standard form, you put your x first, then your y, then the equal sign, then the plain number. Your x, the coefficient of the x term has to be positive. There can't be any fractions, and you have to reduce the equation if necessary. We're going to put this in standard form. Well, the first thing I do is move everything around where it needs to be and watch your signs. So your x is on the left, and it's a -2/5 x. Your y has to cross the bridge. Everybody follow me? And it's a -1/15 y. And your 1/3 has to cross the bridge in this direction. So that's going to be a -1/3 because it was a positive 1/3. Okay? So let's get rid of the -a first, which is the guy next to the x. We're going to change this to 2/5 x plus 1/15 y equals 1/3. Got it? Now we have to get rid of the fractions. We've got the x first, the y second, and the plain number on the other side of the equal sign. We've got the negative off of the x. Now we just have to get rid of those fractions, okay? So what is a common denominator between fifths, 15ths, and thirds? 15. So we're going to multiply everything by 15. And do this in your calculator if you're not good at this. So 15 is going to be, that should be a 6x. Make sure you know how to do that. And this should be a plain 1y. And this should be equal to 5. And now you have x, y, and the number. And you have no negative in the front. And you have no fractions. And you can't reduce that at all.